the one promise he never broke. The sky above Los Angeles was soft and gray that morning. Clouds floated like slow thoughts, undecided about rain. The city was alive as always, noisy with traffic and heavy with ambition. Somewhere in the middle of all that noise, a quiet man walked out of a modest apartment, holding a small envelope in his hand. His eyes looked calm, but inside his chest, something was moving. It had been moving for years. Keanu Reeves took a deep breath and stepped into the day, not as a celebrity, not as an action star, but as a son keeping a promise. Decades earlier, in a tiny apartment in Toronto, a young boy had sat on the cold floor with his knees pulled up to his chest. His mother, Patricia, was sitting on the edge of a borrowed bed, exhausted from her shift at a costume factory. The room was small, but her love was wide enough to fill it. She looked at her son and smiled through tired eyes. "Someday," the boy said, "I'll buy you the house of your dreams, a house where you never have to work again." His mother laughed gently, brushing his hair back with her rough fingers. "You're sweet, baby, but houses cost money." "I'll find a way," he whispered. He meant it. Years passed like pages turned too quickly. Patricia moved from job to job, trying to feed her two sons and hold the family together after their father left. She made costumes for stage plays, worked late nights, and saved every cent. There were no vacations, no new clothes, only bills and the sound of her sewing machine humming like a tired heartbeat. Keanu didn't have much, but he had dreams. His mother taught him to read Shakespeare, to find beauty in stories, to be kind even when life wasn't. She told him the world was hard, but that he didn't have to be. She believed in him when no one else did. And in the deepest part of him, that promise he made as a child never faded. Fast forward to now, standing outside a real estate office in Beverly Hills. The envelope in Keanu's hand held the final signed papers for a house he had been secretly planning for over a year. But this wasn't just any house. This was the house, the one his mother once saw in a magazine 20 years ago, circled in red ink like a forgotten wish. Back then, she had smiled and said, "It's too far away, Keanu, and much too expensive." He remembered how her voice dipped with sadness as she folded the page and tucked it behind an old recipe card. He remembered how she looked at it one last time before closing the drawer. He never forgot. Keanu walked down the street with steady steps. No security guards. No flashy clothes. Just jeans, a plain jacket, and that envelope. When he finally reached the parking garage, his motorcycle was waiting. He climbed on and took off into the afternoon, heading toward the biggest surprise of his mother's life. Meanwhile, Patricia was back in her tiny Los Angeles home. The place was clean, but the walls were thin, and the ceiling leaked when it rained. She didn't complain. She never did. Instead, she watered the plants, read her books, and smiled when she saw her son on TV. But lately, something felt different. Keanu had been distant, secretive even. He hadn't visited in days. And though she trusted him with her life, a part of her worried. Then the doorbell rang. When she opened the door, there was no one there, only a single white rose with a small note tied around it. It read, "Pack a bag. 1 hour. Trust me. Love, Kay." Confused, she walked back inside and sat down slowly. Her heart raced, unsure of what was happening. Was he in trouble? Was this a joke? But something told her to listen. So she did. She packed a small bag, not knowing where she was going, or why. 1 hour later, a sleek black car pulled up outside her house. The driver stepped out, tipped his hat politely, and opened the door for her. "Mrs. Reeves," he asked, "your son has asked me to take you somewhere special." She hesitated for a second, but then her curiosity overpowered her fear. As the car weaved through the streets, memories flooded her mind. She thought about the nights she worked until her fingers bled. She remembered the birthday cakes she made from scratch, The winters they couldn't afford heating, and the way her son always tried to make her laugh when she cried. She never asked for much. Only peace, and for her sons to be safe. 40 minutes. Later, the car pulled up to a quiet road lined with trees. The neighborhood looked like something out of a dream. Clean lawns, soft hills, elegant homes. Her eyes widened as the gate ahead opened. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "We can't afford this." The driver didn't reply. He just smiled. The car rolled to a stop in front of a house so beautiful it looked painted. Tall windows, wide porches, gentle stone pathways, and roses blooming in the front yard. Everything looked familiar, as if plucked from another time. And then she saw him. Keanu stood by the door, still holding the envelope, still wearing that quiet smile he had since he was a boy. She stepped out, heart pounding. "What is this?" she asked softly. He walked toward her and placed the envelope in her hand. "Open it." Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the papers. Her eyes moved across the lines until they stopped at the final words. Property deed. Owner: Patricia Taylor Reeves. She looked up at him, eyes filling. "You bought this?" she asked. "For me?" He nodded, swallowing hard. "You gave me everything, Mom. I just wanted to give you a place that feels like peace." Her hands went to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. For a moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Her knees buckled slightly, but Keanu caught her. They stood there for a long time, just holding each other as the sun broke through the clouds, washing everything in gold. But as the moment quieted, neither of them noticed the black car parked across the street, engine running. Inside was a figure watching them, face half hidden by the shadows. They had been waiting for Keanu to show up for weeks, and now the wait was over. Shadows at the gate. That night, as the lights inside the new house glowed softly through the curtains, Keanu sat quietly on the back porch. He had just finished helping his mother unpack a few bags, showing her the garden, the sunroom, and the special reading nook he had designed just for her. The evening air was cool, touched by the scent of roses and the faint sound of crickets. His heart felt full, yet something in the air stirred uneasy thoughts. It wasn't loud or obvious, just a strange feeling he couldn't name, a kind of stillness that didn't feel like peace. Behind the trees, at the very edge of the property line, the figure from earlier watched through a small pair of binoculars. A thin scar curved along the side of his jaw, almost invisible in the dark. He tapped a worn notebook in his lap and scribbled something quickly. Page after page was filled with newspaper clippings, articles, even hand-drawn sketches of Keanu's face. His eyes weren't filled with hate, but with purpose. Deep, cold purpose. He whispered to himself. He finally bought the house. Just like she said he would. Back inside, Patricia moved slowly through her new home. Every corner seemed unreal, every shelf a dream come true. She ran her fingers over the smooth wooden banister of the staircase, her heart still trying to catch up with reality. She stopped in the hallway, where a photo frame had been placed on a side table. It was one of her favorites. Keanu, at age 10, smiling beside his brother with cake on his chin. She touched it gently and closed her eyes. In her silence, she remembered everything. The fights, the bills, the times she had gone to sleep hungry just to make sure the boys had food. She had cried in secret more times than she could count. And now, standing in this beautiful house, she felt something break loose in her chest. Not pain, not sadness. Just something long buried finally rising to the surface. She turned toward the window, but didn't see the man still parked just beyond. The trees. The next morning, Keanu brewed coffee in the kitchen. His mom came down wearing a robe and slippers, her eyes still adjusting to the brightness of the space. "How did you sleep?" he asked, pouring her a cup. She smiled and looked around like she still didn't believe it. "I woke up 3 times, just to make sure I wasn't dreaming," he chuckled. "It's real, all of it." They sat together in the sunlit kitchen, sipping coffee like old times, but without the fear of eviction notices or broken heaters. They talked about small things, gardens, recipes, favorite books, but neither of them knew that nearby, the man with the notebook was already making moves. Later that afternoon, while Keanu ran out to pick up a few supplies, Patricia decided to take a walk in the garden. The air was crisp, the flowers freshly watered. She wandered down a small path lined with stepping stones, humming an old song she used to sing while sewing. Then she saw it, a single red envelope placed on the garden bench. Confused, she looked around. No one was there. The driveway was empty. The gates were closed. She picked it up and opened it slowly. Inside was a single piece of paper with typed words, "You think you know your son. But some shadows don't disappear just because the sun is out." There was no name, no return address. Her hand trembled slightly as she folded it back. Her eyes scanned the trees, her heart thudding faster now. She stood still for a long moment before walking quickly back toward the house. She wanted to believe it was a prank, a mistake. Maybe some strange fan trying to mess with them. But the words had a sharpness to them, a knowing edge. An hour later, Keanu returned with groceries and smiled when he saw his mother waiting at the door. But when she didn't return, the smile, he knew something was wrong. She handed him the note in silence. He read it once, then twice. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak right away. "Mom," he finally said, "I need you to trust me." "I do," she said softly. "But what aren't you telling me?" He looked down, then out toward the trees. He hadn't wanted to. Bring any of that darkness here. Not now. Not after everything she'd been through. But it seemed the past had followed him anyway. Keanu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a younger version of himself, standing with a group of men. One of them was the man with the scar, barely visible, then but unmistakable now. "His name is Jaren," Keanu said. "We were once close. He was like a brother. But something changed. He made choices I couldn't follow. We parted ways over 10 years ago. I thought that chapter was closed. Why?" "Would he come here now?" "Because of this house," Keanu said. "Because of what it represents. To him, it's not just a gift to you. It's a symbol. And some people, they can't stand to see others move on." Patricia reached out and took his hand. "Whatever this is, we'll face it. Together." Outside, beyond the trees, Jaren placed another note inside his notebook. This one read, "The game begins tomorrow. He won't see it coming." The test of quiet storms, the sun rose heavy and golden over the hills, bathing the new house in warm light. But inside, the air was still, too quiet. Keanu stood in the hallway, staring at the red envelope again. He had placed it on the table, beside the keys, unable to throw it away. It wasn't just a note. It was a message from a ghost he had tried to forget. A reminder that the past, no matter how deeply buried, had claws sharp enough to dig through concrete. His mother moved through the house slower that morning. Her smile, though present, felt weaker. The lines on her face seemed more defined. There was something about being watched, even if unseen, that drained the spirit. Keanu noticed it. He watched her try to distract herself with tea and flowers, with books and morning chores, but he also saw how often she glanced toward the windows, how she paused whenever the wind brushed the curtains. At noon, a delivery truck pulled up to the gate. The driver wore a standard uniform and held a small box marked with Keanu's name. No return label. No sender. The guard at the gate, an older man recently hired by Keanu, radioed to confirm. "Mr. Reeves, do you want me to turn him away?" Keanu hesitated. "No, bring it up. I'll check it." The box was small, no bigger than a shoebox. When Keanu opened it in the study, he found a strange object inside. An old watch, its glass cracked, its hands frozen at exactly 3:11. Underneath it was another note, this time handwritten. "You left time behind, But time didn't forget you. He stared at the watch, memory crashing in like a flood. He was 19 again, standing under a broken street lamp in Vancouver. Beside him, Jaron was bleeding from a wound he got in a street fight gone wrong. They had been young and angry, pulled into a world of underground races and dark deals. The watch had been Jaron's, a gift from his father, and that night he had taken it off and handed it to Keanu, saying, "Hold it until I fix things." But Jaron never did, and Keanu never gave it back. He walked outside with the box in hand, needing air. The garden was quiet. Birds hopped in, the bushes. The wind carried the scent of fresh earth. But his peace was cracking. Not because of fear, but because of what he now realized. Jaron wasn't just haunting him. He was testing him, pushing him into a corner where his silence, his kindness, his gentle strength would be measured not in words, but in how he responded when it truly counted. That evening, Keanu didn't sleep. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a blank page. His mother had gone to bed early, tired from the strange weight of the day. He didn't want to worry her further, but inside, he was preparing. He wrote a letter, not to Jaron, but to himself, a reminder of who he had become. He had seen enough pain in his life, loss, betrayal, grief. He had buried friends, watched people disappear, lived quietly even when fame knocked loudly. But he had never let bitterness define him. This house was a symbol of that, a promise kept. And he would not let someone drag him back into a world he had fought to leave. At dawn, he walked to the gate and taped a note on the outside, visible from the road. 4 simple words: "Come talk. No tricks." Then he returned inside and waited. The knock didn't come until evening. He opened the door himself. Jaron stood there, looking older, thinner, more haunted than before. The scar on his face had faded but not disappeared. His eyes held something strange. Not anger, not guilt, but a deep, sharp curiosity. Like he wanted to see what kind of man Keanu had truly become. Neither spoke at first. "You found it," Keanu finally said. Jaron nodded. "The house from the magazine, I remember. Your mom used to show it to you like it was a fairy tale." Keanu stepped aside, motioning him in. "You came all this way. Say what you came to say." Jaron walked into the house, eyes drifting over. The clean walls, the warm lights, the photos of a life quietly lived. He walked slowly, as if in a museum, touching nothing. He stopped in front of the fireplace and turned. "You made it out," Jaron said. Keanu folded his arms. "I tried to bring you with me. You tried, but you gave up." "I let go," Keanu said calmly. "There's a difference." Jaron laughed under his breath. "You always had that peaceful monk energy, like nothing could touch you. But we both know that's not true." Keanu walked forward, closing the space between them just slightly. "You didn't come here for closure," he said. "You came to see if I'd fall, if this house, this gift to my mother, could be tainted." Jaron didn't deny it. "It's beautiful," he said, "and too perfect. I wanted to see what you'd do if I reminded you where you came from." Keanu leaned in slightly. "I came from love, from a mother who worked her hands raw to give me something better. I came from pain, yes, but I also came from people who believed I could be more." Jaron's face tightened. "You think I didn't have that?" he asked, voice rough. "You think I didn't want out too?" "I know you did," Keanu said. "But you chose to fight shadows instead of stepping into the light. And now you're here, trying to break something you never built." The room felt heavy. The silence between them stretched like glass, thin, dangerous. Then Jaron reached into his coat. Keanu tensed, but what he pulled out was not a weapon. It was a picture, an old one, of the two of them, young, wild, arms over each other's shoulders. Before the fights, before the scars, before the silence. "I kept this," Jaron said. because part of me still believed you'd come back. Keanu. Took the photo and held it for a long moment. I'm not coming back, he said softly. But you can come forward, if you're ready. Jaren looked away, jaw clenched. Too late for that. And then he turned and walked out. Keanu didn't follow, but as the door closed, he knew this wasn't over. The lie beneath the floorboards. The next morning arrived soft and gray again, but the light seemed thinner now, like it was watching rather than warming. Keanu stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 cups out of habit, even though he knew only one would be used. His mother was still asleep upstairs. Or maybe pretending to be. Last night's encounter with Jaren hadn't escaped her senses, even though he hadn't told her everything. He couldn't. Not yet. He sat at the breakfast table and stared at the photograph Jaren had left behind. There was something tragic in it. 2 boys with scraped knees and big dreams, their eyes wide open to a world they didn't yet understand. Now that world had changed, hardened. The city was different. The paths they walked had separated, and only one of them had climbed out of the pit they both fell into. And that, Keanu knew, was why Jaren had come. It wasn't just about jealousy. It wasn't even revenge. It was deeper. It was a need to remind the world and himself that he still mattered. That even if he couldn't build something, he could still break it. But Keanu wasn't ready to let him. By noon, a strange quietness took over the house. Not the peaceful kind. The air felt like it was listening. Patricia finally came downstairs, dressed and trying to act normal. She cooked breakfast, talked about what flowers she wanted to plant, even made a list of books she wanted to find for her new reading room. But behind her smile was worry, and Keanu saw it in her eyes every time he looked up. You're thinking about him, she said suddenly. Keanu nodded without pretending. He's not done. She placed the dishes in the sink and dried her hands slowly. Then you need to tell me everything, she said. Because if someone's coming for you, or for us, I deserve to know what we're facing. So he did. For the first time, he told her everything. Not just about Jaren, but about those years before the fame. The nights he and Jaren ran the streets, the favors owed to dangerous people, the money borrowed, the close calls, the one night that changed everything, when a deal went wrong and Jaren chose to disappear instead of taking responsibility. He said we'd always be brothers, Keanu said, voice low. But that night, when it all fell apart, I took the blame for something he started. And that was the last time I saw him, until now. Patricia didn't flinch. Instead, she reached out and touched her son's hand. You didn't run, she said. That's the difference. You stayed and became a man. Just then, the doorbell rang. Keanu stood, tense, and walked to the front door. But when he opened it, no one was there. Just a cardboard box, smaller than yesterday's. This time he brought it inside carefully. He placed it on the kitchen table and opened the lid. Inside was a piece of old wood, cracked, stained, clearly torn from something. Taped to it was a small photo, this house, from years ago, before it was restored. And in the corner of the photo, almost invisible, was a single shadowed figure standing by the window. Keanu leaned in. The man in the photo was Jaren. Patricia gasped. Wait, was he already here? Keanu picked up the piece of wood and turned it over. Etched into the back were the words, "There's more under your feet than you know." A strange silence filled the room. Keanu's eyes widened slightly. He stood quickly and walked to the back of the house, into the room that had once been sealed during renovations. It was a side room with creaky floorboards and an old fireplace, untouched for years. The contractors had said the space wasn't safe and planned to reinforce it later. But now, Keanu knelt by the floor and began tapping. One board sounded hollow. He pried it up carefully. Underneath, wrapped in layers of plastic and cloth, was a metal box. His breath caught. His mother stood behind him, silent. He opened the box, slowly, and inside were bundles of cash, a thick pistol, and a faded journal. The first page was dated 21 years ago. The handwriting was Jaren's. "If anything happens to me, or if I have to run, bury this. I'll come back for it." Keanu stared at the journal, heart pounding. This house, the house he thought was his mother's dream, had once been Jaren's hiding place, his sanctuary, his secret. He picked this place for a reason, Keanu said quietly. "Long before I ever saw it in that magazine, he was already here." Patricia looked stunned. "Do you think he planned all this?" Keanu stood up slowly, the box in his hands. "I don't know," he said. "But now I understand why he was watching. He wasn't just testing me. He was waiting to reclaim what he thinks is his." That night, Keanu didn't sleep again. The journal sat open on the table, its pages filled with names, addresses, coded notes, and strange symbols. Whoever Jaren had become over the years, he had grown darker, sharper. And now he was circling back not because of jealousy, but because the house held something more, something that could hurt people. The next morning, just as the sun broke the clouds, Keanu made a decision. He kissed his mother on the forehead and whispered, "Pack your things." "Where are we going?" "Someplace safe. What about you?" He looked at her, tired, but focused. "I'm staying. This house doesn't belong to him. Not anymore. But before I lock it down, I have to know everything." Patricia looked afraid, but she nodded. An hour later, she was gone. And Keanu was alone in the house, with the journal, the hidden floorboard, and the storm quietly gathering outside. He picked up the journal again, and on the very last page, written in newer ink, he found something chilling. "If he's reading this, I told you I'd come back. This time, let's see what you're really made of." The house never forgot. Keanu moved through the house like a man walking through a dream turned inside out. Every step he took echoed slightly longer than it should have. The walls, once a symbol of warmth and safety, now felt heavier, filled with secrets that had waited too long in the dark. He didn't know whether to feel betrayed by the house or by himself, because for all the care he had taken to protect his mother, to build a sanctuary, he hadn't thought to ask what this place used to be. The journal Jaren left behind was no ordinary record. It was part map, part confession, part time bomb. On its third-to-last page was a small drawing of the house's blueprint, marked with strange red symbols. One circle appeared directly beneath the library, a room Keanu had restored himself with bookshelves and soft reading chairs for his mother. The second was deeper, beneath the wine cellar, in an area even the renovation team had skipped over because the foundation seemed too old to disturb. But now Keanu knew better. The first place he went was the library. It was silent, bathed in the soft smell of old paper and oak. He moved one of the chairs aside and crouched low, tapping the wooden floor again with his knuckles. After a few minutes, he found it. A faint shift in sound. The board beneath the rug wasn't original. It had been replaced. He pried it up slowly and found a second compartment, smaller than the one before. Inside, it was an envelope sealed with wax and a single roll of undeveloped film, brittle with age. The note inside read, "They'll come for this. If you ever want the truth, develop it. But no, it can't be unseen." Keanu's fingers tightened around the paper. This wasn't just about hidden money or secrets anymore. This was something deeper, something Jaren had buried with intention. And if it was bad enough to stay hidden this long, what did it mean that he wanted Keanu to find it now? He didn't. Wait. He left the house and drove to an old photography studio he remembered from years ago, one that still processed film in the back room. The owner was an old friend, a quiet man who owed Keanu a favor. An hour later, Keanu sat in a dim, red-lit room as the film developed. Each frame came to life slowly, shadows becoming shapes, lines becoming people. At first, it was nothing unusual. Photos of old buildings, alleys, street corners in downtown Los Angeles. But then came the one that stopped his breath. It showed a man, barely visible, shaking hands with someone in a dark coat. The man was Jaron. The other, Keanu realized, with a jolt, was a known city official, someone involved in real estate and urban development. Someone recently exposed in the news for bribery. Frame after frame showed more. Jaron in meetings, exchanging packages, tailing politicians, watching. Keanu leaned forward, heart pounding. These weren't just old photos. This was evidence. Blackmail. Leverage. Something Jaron had buried to protect himself, knowing one day he might need someone like Keanu to unearth it. He stared at the final photo. It was the house. His house, taken from above, as if from a drone or rooftop, with the word "safe" written across the bottom in Jaron's handwriting. So Jaron hadn't just chosen the house because it was familiar. He had used it. Long ago it had been his vault, his shelter. And now he was back, not just to haunt Keanu, but to reclaim the past. Keanu left the studio and drove straight back. But as he approached the gates, something changed. The gate was open, wide. His breath caught. He parked down the road and approached on foot. Inside, lights flickered inside the windows. He moved through the trees like a shadow, heart hammering. When he stepped through the door, the smell hit him first, old cigar smoke and damp earth. And then, in the center of the living room, Jaron stood, calm, waiting, arms crossed. And in his hand was the metal box from beneath the floor. "Took you long enough," Jaron said. Keanu didn't speak right away. He took a slow step forward. "You've been using this place since the beginning," Keanu said. "You buried all of it. Photos, journals, money. You made this house your ghost. And now you want to use it again." Jaron's eyes narrowed. "It was never about using it again. It was about seeing if you were still soft. If you'd hand it back like the polite man everyone thinks you are." Keanu stepped closer, voice low and steady. "I'm not the same boy who walked away from you 10 years ago." "No," Jaron said, his voice tightening. "You're worse. You think kindness is a shield. But the world doesn't care about kindness. It eats people like you." Keanu didn't blink. "Maybe. But I don't live in fear anymore." Jaron held up the journal. "This has names in it that people would kill for. You think they won't. Come for you now. You think you can protect your mother when half the city would burn this house to the ground if they knew what it was hiding?" Keanu took one step closer. "Then maybe it's time the truth stopped hiding." "Don't be." "Stupid," Jaron snapped. "You give that film to the wrong person and you'll have blood on your hands." Keanu looked him straight in the eye. "I didn't bury the truth. You did." For a long second, nothing moved. Then Jaron's expression changed. Not anger, resignation. "I thought you might say that," he said quietly, and then he dropped the box to the floor. "You want to be a hero? Fine. Just know, heroes always pay the price." He turned and walked out, disappearing into the night before Keanu could stop him. Keanu stood there alone, heart pounding, the metal box at his feet and the flickering lights casting long shadows across the room. But in his mind, one thought kept ringing louder than the rest. Whatever was coming next had already begun. The house that truth built. The next morning began with silence, the kind that creeps in after a storm but before the damage is fully seen. Keanu stood by the window of his mother's dream home, watching the wind move the trees. The box Jaron had dropped lay unopened on the floor behind him, but Keanu already knew what was inside. Money, documents, maybe more photos, enough to destroy reputations, ruin lives, or maybe just enough to burn this house, and everything it stood for, to ash. He hadn't called the police. Not yet. Because this wasn't about a crime, not in the usual sense. It was about a burden, a question. What do you do when the truth is poison, but silence is a lie? Patricia called from the safe house. Her voice trembled with worry, but she didn't ask for details. She trusted him. Trusted that the son who had grown up from those scraped knee days, who had stayed kind in a world that punished kindness, would know what to do. He promised he'd come for her soon. But first, he had to end this. That afternoon, Keanu drove across the city, not to a newsroom, not to the police, but to a quiet building near the edge of downtown, a legal advocacy group that fought for truth, but knew how to protect the people caught in its fire. They didn't ask who he was, only what he had, and he gave it to them all: film, photos, copies of the journal, even the list of names. You understand this might blow up more than just City Hall, one of the lawyers said. You'll be pulled into it, publicly. Keanu nodded. Some truths, he said, are heavier when left buried. By nightfall, he returned to the house. It was quiet again, but something in the air had changed. He could feel it, like the house itself had exhaled. Finally released from its long-held secret, he walked through each room slowly, touching the edges of bookshelves, the corners of tables, the fabric of the couch his mother loved so much. The house no longer felt like a trap or a hiding place. It felt honest now, scarred, but real. And in that honesty, he found peace. But peace never comes without its final test. As the clock neared midnight, there was a knock at the door. Keanu opened it and saw Jaren standing there again, this time with nothing in his hands, no boxes, no threats, no twisted smiles. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence, like a shadow that had finally been pulled into the light. You gave it up, Jaren said. All of it. Keanu didn't move. I didn't come this far to live under blackmail. Jaren laughed once, bitter and short. Do you even understand what you've done? Those names were part of a network, a protection system. They'll come after me now, after you. Keanu stepped outside onto the porch, closing the door behind him. I know. They stood in silence for a moment. This was supposed to be my last hand, Jaren muttered. One final card to play. You buried that card in a house you knew I'd find, Keanu said. You didn't come back for it. Not really. You came to see if I'd still protect you. Jaren looked away, eyes glinting in the porch light. Maybe, he whispered. Maybe I just wanted to see if anyone still cared. Keanu looked at him for a long time. You had the chance to build something, Jaren. Like I did. But you kept choosing shortcuts. This house, it became what I made it because I believed in something better. You believed in control, in leverage, and now you're alone. Jaren didn't argue. I didn't think you'd go through with it, he said. You were always the quiet one, the soft one. No, Keanu said. I was the one who listened, and when you listen long enough, you learn what truly matters. Jaren stepped back from the porch. They'll tear you apart, he warned. They'll dig into your past, too. Keanu nodded slowly. Then let them, because I'd rather stand in the storm with the truth than sleep under a roof built on lies. He didn't watch Jaren leave this time. He walked back inside, locked the door, and sat on the floor of the living room. The house creaked softly around him, but not from fear. From rest. It was finally at peace. 3 days later, the headlines. Broke.corruption, secret deals, cover-ups stretching back decades. Keanu's name wasn't front and center. He'd made sure of that. But those who read between the lines knew. Some praised him, others cursed him. A few came knocking, but they were met by a quiet gate and no comment. He moved his mother back in that weekend. She walked through the door slowly, pausing in every room like she was seeing it for the first time. "It's still beautiful," she whispered. "It's more beautiful now," Keanu said. They stood together in the library, near the floorboard where the past had tried to hide. She looked at him, eyes filled with both worry and pride. "You okay?" she asked. He smiled gently. "Not yet, but I'm getting there." Later that evening, they sat in the garden. The roses were blooming again, as if they too had been waiting for truth to find its place in the soil. Keanu looked at the house. Not as a gift. Not as a secret. But as something earned. The house had once belonged to a ghost. Now, it belonged to the truth.